Alex Spanish camp. I was wrong. I did know someone at camp, Laura Longbottom. Although I didn't know her. We'd gone to school together since 3rd grade, I think, or whenever her family had moved to Madison. But we'd never been friends. Or even very friendly. In 5th grade, a substitute had butchered my full name, Alejandra Benavides, reading the attendance sheet, and even though I quickly corrected her to call me Alex, Laura had giggled and started calling me Olage, like a ledge, after that. For a few days, everybody else in our class did too. You'd think someone with the last name Longbottom would have, like, an awareness of making fun of people's names, but apparently back then Laura hadn't been coded for empathy. I saw her right when I got off the bus, and I didn't know whether to be relieved to have one familiar face in the sea of campers or to be afraid that she'd get all these kids to call me a ledge too. So I avoided her, making sure to get in the farthest away check-in line. I kept glancing around, trying to spot her signature high ponytail, so I could steer clear. When I finally dragged my bags to Cabin Ronda, all the cabins were named for Spanish towns. I stumbled through the doorway and saw it. That high pony. Laura was sitting cross-legged on a bed, and the only empty one left was right next to hers. I sucked in a deep breath, for strength. But Laura's eyes brightened as she looked up to see me, nervous and tired, standing in front of her. Alex. She jumped off the squeaky bed and tackle-hugged me. You have no idea how happy I am to see you. And, oh my God, we're in the same cabin. It took me a second to free an arm to tentatively hug her back. She squeezed me tight, and all I could think about was how gross sweaty I must be, and that my breath probably still smelled like the cheese curls I'd been munching on during the bus ride. But what are you doing here? Don't you, know Spanish? I couldn't help but roll my eyes, as I untangled myself from her hug and started dumping all my stuff next to my bed. Why? Because my name is Spanish. I was born at Meriter Hospital, Laura. In Madison. My parents were born in Wisconsin too. Wait until I tell Joss about this. Imagining her shaking her head was comforting. Laura's face flushed. Which almost made me feel bad, except for the fact that she'd been the one to make an insensitive comment. I simply hadn't let it slide. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way, Alex. I just, I thought you were good at Spanish, definitely better than me. She trailed off into an awkward silence. I softened. Learning languages is hard, at least for me. That's why I was at this camp. It was kind of nice if she actually thought I was good at it. Anyway. Do you need help unpacking? I shrugged. Sure. Laura seemed sincere. And now we were going to be in close quarters, literally, for the next 2 weeks. Ronda was the smallest cabin at Tierra de los Lagos, with only 6 girls assigned to it. I paused next to her for a second, scratching at what I knew would not be my only mosquito bite. I remembered watching Laura shine on the dance floor at Walden. For the most part, I'd always felt invisible to popular girls like her. Now here Laura was, helping me pull the stiff sheets across my camp bed and rooting through a bag that had 2 weeks' worth of my underwear in it. Life is weird. If you'd asked me, when I first got there, how I expected to feel on the last day of camp, I would have said super happy. Thrilled. Over the moon. Instead, I was sitting on my bed, clinging to Laura and the 4 other Cabin Ronda chicas. We were all ugly crying. No quiero salir. My Spanish had improved a bit over the 2 weeks, even though I had spent very little time actually working on it. That was mostly because of Laura. Text me as soon as you get home, okay, Lexi? That was Laura's new nickname for me. Much better than a ledge, which she'd actually apologized for, the night we totally bonded at the campfire. I promise. Our goodbye was kinda overdramatic, considering we were heading to the same place. We were separating for the drive only because Laura's mom was picking her up, and I was on the list to take the bus back, and camp doesn't allow you to change your travel plans without a parental signature. Still, I wondered if, once we were home in Madison, everything would be different. With our hands clasped, you couldn't tell Laura's fingers from mine. We'd painted our nails the same shade of shell pink, with contraband polish she'd sneaked into camp. It hadn't been on the approved toiletries list. At first, I'd been worried about using the polish because it was against the rules. Same with using the real shampoo that Laura had also smuggled in. Only Lake-safe shampoo was allowed, this peppermint Y kind that barely sudses that they sell at the health food co-op on Willie Street in Madison. But I got over the worry because Laura didn't seem concerned at all, and her attitude was sort of contagious. Or, not really contagious, it was like she walked around in this spotlight of good luck and good vibes only, and if you were walking next to her, then it was yours to bask in too. Laura had been just as popular at Tierra de los Lagos as she was back at Walden. And from the moment I walked into our cabin, I became her closest camp friend. So that meant that I, too, had been super popular. Can I be honest? Popularity felt great. It was as warm and bright and energizing as sunshine. When Joss and I would walk into the cafeteria at Walden, if we couldn't make a beeline to a table with our friends Hua and Kate, we would find whichever looked the emptiest. We'd slide in with our trays, nodding hello to the quiet kids sitting at the other end. We'd never, ever plop down at the table in the center of the lunchroom where Laura and her friends sat, always laughing at whatever thing the boys across from them were doing to get their attention. If we were near their table, Jocelyn would watch them with disgust. Don't they know that plastic straws are terrible for the environment? And they're just wasting them. They're so immature. Were they, though? To me, they looked like they were just having fun. The straws already existed. It's not like it mattered at this point whether they were used for their intended drinking purpose or to turn the paper wrappers into missiles. Although Joss had a point about whether our school should switch to eco-friendly straws. And hanging out with guys didn't seem immature but the opposite. Grown up. Cool. Why did Joss have to make me feel bad for wanting to be a part of that? At camp, I'd sat at the cool table, giggling with Laura and ducking soggy French fries that Sunjay and Kelvin were flicking at us, while Laura whispered in my ear, "Oh my god, K. Elvin total LY has a crush on you." A fry hit my cheek right then, but I didn't care. In fact, after I looked up and caught Kelvin's big brown eyes, I kind of wanted to save that fry forever. Someday I'll be going through my memory box with my granddaughter, and I'll pull out a petrified fry and be like, "This was the first fry your grandfather ever lobbed at my face, way back at Spanish camp." That's not a totally unrealistic flash forward. At the end of camp party, Kelvin and I danced together 3 times, and one was a slow dance. He held my hand even after the song stopped. We'd exchanged email addresses and were going to friend and follow each other on everything, once we got our phones back from camp's quarantine. He lived in Minneapolis, which is pretty far from Madison, but Laura kept saying how romantic long distance could be. Afterward, Laura and I had stayed up all night. First we packed up her stuff, then mine. She sprawled on my bed, handing me clothes from my drawer. She tossed a wad of turquoise at my head. "Okay, first order of business when we get back to Madison, shopping. You need a bikini. No more one-pieces, okay?" I caught the swimsuit and ashamedly shoved it in my suitcase. My mom might be okay with a 2-piece. I wasn't doing swim team this summer, so I didn't need a racing suit anymore. But she would definitely veto a skimpy one like Laura's. "Absolutely," I said. The thought of a shopping trip with Laura was super exciting. "But you can always borrow one of mine." Mi closet es tu closet. Neither of us had learned the Spanish word for closet, which really seemed like an oversight considering how much we both loved clothes. My drawer was empty, so Laura moved on to all the junk I'd put on my bunk shelf. Most of it, I hadn't touched since the first day. Like the pack of stationery, unopened, which she handed to me next. "Were you actually, planning to write letters home? Oh my god, the envelopes are even stamped." I had been. I hid my blush with a laugh. To be fair, I thought I might get pretty bored. "But you got letters from someone." She waved 3 envelopes in the air above her head. "Dude, are they from Kelvin?" I shook my head. "Laura, think about it. He's here. Why would he mail me a letter? Whatever, maybe he's a hopeless romantic or something." Had she seen him flick the fries? Laura studied the return address. 2 are from Jallard. And the other is from Special Agent Lupin? Huh? I blushed again. They're all from Jocelyn. Jallard is one of my nicknames for her, Jocelyn Allard. And Joss and I used to play this elaborate game we made up that involved both spies and mythological creatures and scientists, she called them cryptozoa-somethings, and her character's name was Special Agent Lupin. I had never realized how dorky that sounded till Laura read it aloud. That's, an inside joke. Are you still, really close with her? I shifted my position on the floor. Yeah, I mean, she's been my best friend since, well, forever. The kind of friend who mails a letter to you at camp 3 days before you even leave so that on the second day, when you're peak homesickness and unsure about everything, you have an envelope to slit open and comforting words. From home, along with a handy days left countdown filled out on an index card. That's cool, Laura said, with a tone that kind of suggested it was the opposite. It's just that, you're really fun and super cute. Kelvin agrees. She giggled. It seems like maybe you wouldn't have a ton in common anymore with someone like Jocelyn Allard. You know? What was unsaid was that she thought Jocelyn, my best friend, was neither of those adjectives. Not really fun, not super cute. It made me cringe to think she felt that way. If Laura knew her like I did, she'd know that Joss can sometimes be dorky, like anyone, and it's true she's not into clothes, but she's also hilarious, and loyal, and fun. Just in a very different way. I nodded in agreement. Guilt formed a pit in my stomach, or maybe it was the loaded baked potatoes and grilled hot dogs they'd served us for dinner. But I still said, yeah, I see what you mean. Anyway, I'm glad I got to know the real Alex. Lexi. Laura grinned at me, and it felt like winning a prize. The real Alex. Lexi. Maybe she was right. This cool version of me had been trapped inside for a long time, and camp had finally given her, Lexi, a chance to shine. What should I do with these? The letters from Joss were pinched between Laura's shell-pink nails. Pack or trash? Trash, I said without a second thought.